Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 54. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Mandrenanena Devasya Kuryan Dravyamayim Buddha Saparyam Vividair Dravyair Dasakala Vibhagavit. We affirm it by bringing to mind the divine personality unto the supreme vessel by this hymn, and this of the Lord one should do physically, with learning, worshipping by prescribed methods, with varieties and paraphernalia, according to country and time, and one who knows the divisions. Different times and places, or eras, you could say, had different modes of worship. Text 55. Salilai Suchibir Malyair Vanyair Mula Paladibeh Sastankuram Sukais Charchet Tulasya Preyaya Prabhum. Using water to purify the garlands, the forest flowers, and the roots, the different kinds of vegetables, the newly grown grass, the buds, the bark, such as burja, and one should worship by the basil leaves, which are very dear to the Lord, the holy. Now, the Tulasi basil is mentioned in specific, but you can use substitutes or the same class, I would say. But basically what goes on is you use the local material. Text 56. Labdva dravyamayim archam kashete ambav adeshu varchayat amratatma mune santo yatavan mitavanyabu. By getting made up of in a physical way, there's the worshipful by earth and water, and you begin with the worship as one who's self-controlled, and you act as a great personality, peaceful, with control of how you talk, and frugal, and eating whatever is available in the forest. And by whatever is available, of course, you're following safety rules if these mushrooms aren't safe. But people would be learned in that sort of thing back in the day. Text 57. Svetchavatara charitayar achintya nijamayaya karishyate utamaslokas tad dhyayad Dayan Gamam. By his will in incarnation and activities which are inconceivable, by his potency, he performs for the Supreme Personality mentioned in scripture that one should meditate on what is very attractive. Text 58. Paricharya Bhagavato Yavatya Purva Sevita Tamantra Hardayanaiva Prayunjyan Mantra Murteya. With service of the Divine Personality as prescribed, they do what is previously recommended for the, by the teachers. Those hymns, they have them in the heart, and certainly one should worship who is non-different from the mantra. So the script, what the scriptures actually talk about, the one that the scriptures ultimately point to, the causal, is one who you should ultimately worship, whatever the means or tools you're using for that worship. People use the word seher or that sort of way of talking about magic to refer to generally stuff where like people worship the objects, like they're worshiping a bottle or whatever, and whatever spirit that comes and wants to be part of it is usually the thing. Now sometimes they call on specific entities, but Text 59 to 60. Evam kayana manasa vachasa cha manogatam paricharyamano bhagavan bhaktimat paricharyaya pumsam mamayanam samyag vajatam bhava vardana Sreyo desate abhimatam yadharmadeshu dehinam. And thus, by the body and mind, and the words thinking of the Lord, they're engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God, according to the regulative principles. They worship the Lord, and the devotee is sincere and serious, perfectly engages these services of the Lord of Earth, who increases the ecstasy of the devotees as their ultimate goal, and bestows as they desire regarding spiritual life and economic development of the conditional souls. And one of the things is people think to themselves, oh, I've done this, I've acquired this wealth, and it's God has given it to you. But in another sense, you may be given, these sorts of wealth and even more on a spiritual platform or an eternal platform. Text 61. Viraktas Chandriya Ratau Bhakti Yogena Bhuyasa Tam Nirantara Bhavana Bhajatada Vimuktaya. In the completely renounced order of life, in the matter of sense gratification by the process of devotional service, is a great seriousness unto him as something constant. You're waking, you're sleeping, you're living, you're dying, you're eating, you're whatever. is in the topmost stage of ecstasy, and you must worship directly for liberation. So, you don't have to go through things. Just go straight to a causal of a causals. Text 62. Ete uktastam parikramya pranamya cha nirparbaka yayau manduvanam punyam harascharana charchitam. Thus, being spoken to by him as he circumambulated, offering obeisances. Well, circumambulation tends to be a sanctification act in itself. The boy of the king also went up to the Manduvanam, which is a forest in Vrindavana, which is auspicious and pious for the divine potency, because it's imprinted by the lotus feet. And remember, the lotus feet are left behind, and God ultimately, it's not just the actions of incarnate beings. God ultimately decides which places are most sacred for a nation, the world, etc., etc. Don't let them fool you with secular holidays. Text 63. Tapovanam gate tasmin pravishto natapuram mune arhitarhanako rajna sukhasina uvachatam. The forest path for executing austerity was thus approached there, and he entered within the private house of the great, being respected by respectable behavior, and by the king, when he comfortably sat on his seat, he said unto him, text 64, Narada uvacha rajan kim vyayase dirgam bhukanna paresushyata kimvana vrishyate kamo dharmo vartena samyuta. And the great Narada said, my dear king, what are you thinking of? Very deeply. I see as if your face is drawing up, whether or not you've lost the ability for sense gratification, are doing religious rituals, are economic development. So, have you been limited in those three things? And spiritually, we don't have to be limited in those things, except, there could be wrongful efforts, or it could be wrong to not do something. Text 65. Rajovacha suto me balako brahman stranana karunatmana nirvasitah panchavarsha sahamatra mahankaveh. The king replied, my tender boy of the spiritual class, one who is too addicted to his wife, one whose heart of heart and without mercy is banished. Although the boy is 5, with his mother, who was a great personality and a devotee. So after the son left, he certainly realized what was going on and regretted it. And some things can't be undone, but certainly, repentance or atoning or whatever you want to call it in whatever cultural term is possible. Text 66. Ape anatham vane brahman masmadantya arbakam barka srantam sayanam kshudetam parimlana mukambujam. Certainly, without being protected by anyone in the forest, as of the spiritual class, whether or not you didn't devour the helpless boy, the wolves, being fatigued, laid down when they were hungry. Oh, yeah, whether or not you killed the boy by the devouring of wolves, he was fatigued and he laid down as a hungry person, emaciated, so starving, and you could see that in his face, which was still like a lotus flower. Text 67. Aho me bata da uratmyam strijitasyo padaraya yo nkam premnaruru kshantam nabhyanandam asatama. Alas, I've certainly been conquered by a woman's cruelty. Just think of me in this regard, whose lap, out of love, there was a trying to rise to it, and I didn't receive properly, and I was most cruel. Because going back to earlier, the child was trying to climb in his lap, and because of the one wife, he didn't allow it. And it's like, they're both the kids, Text 68. Narada uvacha mama sucha svatanayam devaguptam visampate tat prabhavam avijnaya pravrankte yadyaso jagat. Narada said, "Don't be aggrieved about your own son. He's angelically protected. O master of society, his influence, without knowing about it, is widespread. His reputation is all over the world." Text 69. Surushkaram karma krutva luka palayir ate prabhu a ishyate achirato rajan yaso vipulayam stava. It's impossible to perform work after the performance of the great personalities. Even if one's quite competent, you'll come back without delay, my great king, causing your reputation to become great. And so some things that some do can't even be done by the world rulers, which is a way of talking about certain, as we'd say in the West, angels. Text 70. Maitreya uvacha ete devarshina proktam visruchya jagati pate Raja Lakshmim Anandartya Putram Evan Vachintayat. Maitreya said, thus, by the great light being that spoke, hearing the king about the opulence of his big kingdom, that without taking care of his son, he certainly began to think of him. And so that's one of the things too. Whether it's through a light being, a great sage with, important spiritual knowledge, you should take the advice. Text 71. Tatra bishikta prayatastam upaushya vibhavarim samahita paryacharad vrashya adesena purusham. Thereupon, after taking a bath with great attention, there was fasting in the night with perfect attention and worshipping by the great sage as advised of the Supreme Personality, of the Transcendent One. And so in this day and age, fasting in the night is it's not the way. But in previous ages, it would have been permissible to fast after the sunset. And our fast of the night in this age is to retreat, where you're in a place where there's only worship, and you only step out of the area to go to the bathroom. You don't stay out longer for the purpose of combing your hair. Definitely not for getting together with one's wife or any of that. Text 72. Treratrante kapita bararasana atma varte anusarena masam ninya Vrchayan harim. At the end of the night, so he's fasting at night instead of the day. Or maybe he only had a meal at the end of the night. So maybe at the start of the night and the end of the night, before dawn, just like the Muslims do. But in this case, it was only at the end of 3 that he would eat. And he did this just to preserve the body by eating fruits and berries. And he did it minimally, as was necessary, for 1 month. And that went by with him worshiping the divine potency. And so we have 3 twice. So it looks like, so for 1 month that went by, every 3 nights, but it says 3 twice. So is it 3 in terms of months? Text 73. Devitiyam cha tatha masam shashtha Tha Shashta Rabako Denne Tarna Parnadebe Sirnai Kirtano Vyarchayan Vebum. The next month, he also, as mentioned above, every 6th day of the month, the boy on the days made grass and leaves his food and continued his method of worship for the Supreme Personality of God. So I guess he switched his method up, which can help to do that with some things, but only eating fruit every 3 days and then switching to only eating vegetables every 6 days is text 74. Tertiyam chanayan masam navamehane ambaksha utamaslukam upadavat samadina. With the passing of the 3rd month, on each 9th day, he only drank water and worshipped the Supreme Personality by selected verses when he was in a trance. And it's important to learn different trances, not because you want to get high or low or whatever, but because of the consciousness that you're devoting in different ways, right? Text 75. Chaturthamape vayemasam devadase hane vayubaksho jitta savaso dhyayan devam adarayat. For the 4th month, in that way, on the 12th day, he inhaled air. Every 12th day, so maybe the 1st, the 13th, and the 25th. And he controlled his breath by meditating. And he worshipped like an angel. Text 76. Panchamemase anuprapte jitta savaso nurpatmaja Vyayan Brahma Pada Ikena Tastau Sathanur Ivachala. In the 5th month, he was so situated and controlling the breathing. This son of the king meditated on the Creator on one leg. He stood just like a column without movement. Text 77. Sarvato mana akrishya harde bhutendriyasayam dhyayan bhagavato rupam nadrakshit kinchana param. In all respects, his mind was concentrated, his heart caused a resting of the senses and the objects of senses, and they meditated on the Supreme Personality, and he didn't see anything else accept that as the form. Text 78. Adaram mahad adinam pradana purushasvaram brahma darayam manasya trayo lokas chakampere. And he reposed with the material sum, known as Mahat Tattva, as the chief master of living entities. He considered the Creator and took him to heart. And all the three planetary systems and all the spheres began to tremble. Now in yourself, you can definitely bring this about, or this can happen. But this can happen in another sense too. The Brahma Samhita 535 contains Andantara Satha Paramanu Shayantara Satam. He's entered into the universe, even the atom. Text 79. Yada eka padana sa parthivarbakas tastau tad angushta nepideta mahi nanama tatrardam ivendra dishdita tariva savyatarata pada. When on a leg, the king's child remains standing on his big toe that is pressed to the earth. He bent down, and then, like a king of elephants, was half the situation, and the other, like a boat, going right to left with every step. Oh, so the elephant being carried on a boat rocks left to right as it steps. Well, it's a small enough boat that that's the case, which used to be standard. Text 80. Tasmin abidyayate visvam atmano dvaram nirudyasum ananyaya deya luka niruchvasa nepideta barsam saluka palah saranam yayur harim. While he meditated with full concentration, Dhruva, the total body of the universe, with its holes closed, the life air, without diverting it, was the meditation on all the planets that stopped breathing, and thus, soon facing suffocation, all the great beings of the different planets took shelter of the divine potency. Text 81. Deva uchu naevam viramo bhagavan prana rudam charasya khila sattva damna videhe tanu virginad Vimoksham prapta vayam tavam saranam saranyam. All the light being said, we can't understand this, but divine personality, how we feel our breathing choked, moving when we're not moving, the universal existence and its reservoir. Kindly do the needful thing, therefore. Liberate us from the danger that's approaching. All of us, unto you seek shelter. Who is worthy to seek shelter of? Text 82. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Mabhashta Balam Tapaso Duratyayan Nivartayishya Pratyata Savadhamma Yato He Va Prana Niruddha Asid Autana Padir Maya Sangatatma. The noble personality of God replied, "Don't be afraid." The boy, by his severe austerity, is strongly determined. I'll ask him to stop so you can return to your own homes. Because from that is certainly how the choking of your life error happened, on account of the son of Uttanapada being fully absorbed in the thought of me. So sometimes the miraculous happens and things respond that aren't your objects of worship. And so no one's going to take away your okay, I think I might include 78 to 82 in something, right? Or maybe 77 to 82.